associated disorders, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on our site. We do not endorse any recommendation or opinion made by any member or physician, nor do we advocate any treatment. You are responsible for your own medical decisions. Now, I'm going to turn over the introductions of our speaker to Martha Butterfield, the webinar coordinator of NJCTS. Marty?
Kelly, thank you. And good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on cyber safety. Tonight is a bit of a milestone for us. This is the 50th webinar we have done in our Wednesday webinar series since we began in January of 2008. For those of you new to our webinar series, I invite you to visit our webinar archive on our website, where you can download without charge any of our previous presentations. In the past 5.5 years, we have had an outstanding group of medical and educational professionals address issues on a variety of neurological, parenting, and educational topics. This is Dr. Hartke's third appearance in our series. He first presented in April 2011 addressing anxiety and its impact on sports, academics, and performance. Earlier this year in May, he presented on social skills, offering strategies to help students, families, and educators reduce risks, cope with challenges, and utilize interactive technology in pro-social ways. I'll get to his official introduction in just a moment, but before I do that, I have a couple of things I want to call your attention to. The slide on your screen is about our 4th annual Mendham Walk on November 23rd in Mendham, New Jersey. If you live or work in New Jersey or are a close neighbor, we hope you will join us that day. If not, and you can't make it, I hope you will log on to our website and make a donation. Funds raised go to support our programming, such as tonight's webinar. The next thing I need to address has to do a little bit with money. And regrettably, effective November 1st, we are instituting a $20 fee for webinar attendees who wish to receive professional development credit. So just so there's no confusion, webinars will still be presented without charge. The $20 fee will be assessed only to those attendees who also request to receive professional development credits. Now to my introduction of tonight's presenter, Dr. Graham Hartke. Dr. Hartke received his undergrad and graduate degrees from Rutgers University. He is a licensed psychologist with a private practice in Roseland, New Jersey, where he works with children, adolescents, and adults, providing psychological therapy and assessment. He specializes in cognitive behavioral treatment of anxiety disorders, OCD, as well as Tourette syndrome, behavior management, ADHD, ODD, high-functioning autism spectrum disorders, and sports performing arts. In addition to being the school psychologist at Shepherd School in Morristown in Kinnelon, New Jersey, he is director of their extended school year summer program and serves as their anti-bullying coordinator. When his schedule actually permits him to do anything else, he serves as an outreach presenter for our organization, presenting workshops for students, educators, and other professionals across the state. We are delighted to have him back to present again, so without further introduction, I'll turn the presentation over to him. Dr. Hartke, welcome.
Thank you, Marty. And I'd like to also thank Kelly and Faith Rice and everyone at the New Jersey Center for Tourette Syndrome for inviting me to present this webinar. And finally, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank all the participants for attending tonight. So I'm going to get started, and basically I'm going to go through a presentation, and we're going to try to get through the beginning part so we can really focus on the strategies tonight. But tonight's presentation is on cyber safety, and we're calling it the Cyber Safety Guide for Parents and Educators.
Dr. Hartke, we're not seeing your full presentation mode.
What are you seeing?
We're seeing the edit mode.
The edit of the slides?
Your slide with the slides down the side. We're not looking at it in presentation mode.
Is that better?
No, we need to press play. Slideshow play. Or are we looking at the wrong screen?
How's that? Is that better?
No.
Okay. You see it now or no?
We see your power presentation. It's just not in presentation slideshow mode.
Huh. I have it in slideshow mode. Why don't I stop showing my screen and then re-show it, see if that helps.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm trying to switch screens.
It worked in practice.
Yeah. You still don't see it?
No, we don't.
Okay. Can you stop showing my screen? I don't know how to do that.
I'm going to make myself presenter again.
Okay. Alright, so I'll try to share my screen. How's that?
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So let's get started with the presentation. Today's webinar is going to focus on two main areas. First, we're going to review cyberbullying and other online risks. Then we're going to go over present a cyber safety guide, focusing on prevention and response of cyberbullying and other risky behaviors online. And last but not least, I'll have a bunch of slides that you guys can look at afterwards, and I'll highlight some areas that contain some really useful resources in handling these situations. So, when we talk about cyber risk, what are we talking about? Bullying, harassment, intimidation, sexting, which is becoming a real big problem, which we'll get into more detail in a little bit. Privacy invasion, and that's something that is becoming more and more of a concern with technology and the internet. Theft of ideas, materials, personal information, extortion, and even just hiding or masking your identity. So we're going to do a quick overview of what is cyberbullying. And many of you have probably been to trainings or have read about bullying and definitions. So I'm going to provide just an outline of what we're talking about when we talk about cyberbullying. Really, it has to be an intentional aggressive behavior. It has to be an intentional act that's unwanted by the target. And it could be any mixture of behaviors: taunting, harassing, mocking. There needs to be an imbalance of power, either real or perceived, where the bully has more power than the target or the bullies. The behavior should be repeated to be technically cyberbullying or bullying, although New Jersey HIB law does state that it can be a single incident or a series of incidents, but generally speaking, in most literature and research, bullying is to be classified as bullying itself. It needs to be repeated. It needs to be done. It's done by one or more people against another, and to make it cyberbullying, behaviors need to occur in a cyber setting, so online, through cell phones, other electronic devices. So how does this play out in the real world? Well, there's different types of cyberbullying. There's verbal cyberbullying, which is saying or writing mean things, so posting on Facebook or other places through text message, name-calling, inappropriate sexual comments, threatening to cause harm. Also can include social relational bullying. And in the cyber world, this focuses on hurting someone's reputation or destroying relationships. A lot of times girls use this type of cyberbullying, but boys also do. So this involves leaving someone out on purpose, ostracizing, spreading rumors. And physical bullying is usually just considered in non-cyberbullying situations, but it involves hurting someone physically or destroying their property. In a virtual world, you can hurt someone by destroying their virtual property. This can be done in a virtual physical bullying, I guess you would call it, hacking cyber accounts, destroying online property. A good example is kids that play these multi-player online games, like World of Warcraft, where someone will go on, steal someone's account, and destroy everything they've worked towards in that game. And the last part of this is that consider that each of these types of bullying may occur overtly or covertly, so publicly or in a hidden manner. So they might might be talking behind someone's back, in his private chat room, might be covertly. The problem with cyberbullying is that the chances of something that is covert or hidden being public are very large. So something as what kids would call could be blasted or could be put into blast mode or blast very quickly, and that usually means that something is sent to many people or shared in public very quickly. So a scandalous text message goes out to the whole school in a half-hour time period. So there's just a list of cyberbullying behaviors. You could put many behaviors on this list. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, but it includes everything from kind of the classic bullying areas of targeting ethnicity, race, gender, to areas where it's more becomes like harassment, stalking, intentionally annoying someone when told to stop, uninvited sexual comments, sexual harassment types behaviors, slandering, and stealing, borrowing someone's virtual property. All these behaviors can be part of cyberbullying. So I'm going to go over quickly. I'm not going to go over these slides in super detail, but the basic components of cyberbullying, you really first have the actors, and the first actor is the bully. The second actor is the victim. Now, just some points to show in here are that some areas of bullying of the bully, they typically have a need to dominate, and bullying is typically learned behavior. So it's modeled. They see it modeled in their life somewhere, or they're reinforced that behavior. But it's usually as a combination where there's a learned behavior component. Often there's a lot of social material gains and rewards for it, especially in cyberbullying. Posting something online, might get someone a lot of attention, might make them feel like they're popular. And just some difference between boys and girls. Boys tend to do more overt verbal bullying in general, and girls tend to do more covert relational bullying. So although both males and females can engage in all types of bullying. And one thing I like to point out is that, contrary to popular belief, that often bullies, especially males, tend to have a very positive self-image. The classic, idea that goes around in the common, there's a common thought that, oh, bullies must have low self-esteem. Well, the research does not show that to be true. Often they have high self-esteem. The victim, it's important to point out that the victim or target of cyberbullying can be anyone at any time. But it's obviously more likely when someone has differences from the norm group based on skin color, physical fitness, ability, just their basic personality and disposition. If they're more shy and less aggressive. A very common target is when males seem more effeminate or females seem more masculine in those areas. And one thing to point out on the bottom of here is that often kids, the victim who is someone who is socially rejected in one place, so the kids are actively rejecting that kid and kind of targeting them, they sometimes have a greater chance for rejection when they go to different locations. So a kid that goes to a new school or different setting, if they have a history of being rejected in a lot of places, there's a greater chance for that rejection to occur in different locations. So it highlights the importance of being aware, the adults who work in schools and parents, if your child's more vulnerable at risk, to have extra programs and services in place. The other components, the other actors are the bystanders, the people that are witnessing. Online, it could be many bystanders, way more bystanders online than, in more traditional bullying situations on a playground, let's say. And often, you can't forget that the bystanders often have a traumatic experience witnessing the bullying as well. And often they don't do anything. There's a lot of inaction that goes on. they don't want to be called a snitch. They could be blaming the victim. So it's definitely a group that is important to monitor and work with. One of the major components of bullying is the setting, and there's a lot of aspects to consider with this. One is the cyber modality. So where is this occurring in the cyber world? Is it through text message? Is it on Twitter? Also, it's the actual physical setting where the actors are. So where are the players? Where are the bystanders? Where are the bullies? Where are the victims while this is going on? Are they sending messages at home? Are they in school? Are they sitting in front of the computer in the library at school? When is this going on? Those are questions that really play into it. Also, the rules and policies of both the cyber setting, so let's say the rules of Facebook, as well as the rules of the physical setting. So the rules of Facebook's rules and when you're at home and no one's around. What are the rules and policies there? They're all going to influence what goes on. And it's also very important with the setting. We'll talk about a little bit how that having a positive climate or the type of climate of the setting really influences these behaviors. I'll point out the last line on the bottom in the role that adults play in the setting in their response to situations, that bullies need adults to be bystanders. So it's very important that adults step in and act and help out in these situations. Otherwise, it's condoning the behavior in a non-direct way. Some other risky behaviors we talk about are sexting, which is a real big problem. And this involves sending or receiving sexually explicit or sexually suggestive images on video or a cell phone, or sending it through the internet. Often people take a selfie photo, which is a photo of themselves. In most cases, they're sending it to a boy or a girlfriend that they like, and it's kind of a way of it seems like it's the way of the world these days with kids. They're growing up with everyone has a phone, and hey, I'll send you a picture of myself. But the problem is that kids don't often realize that there's a high risk of this picture being distributed and becoming, part of, the entire school's gossip for the day. I mean, that's the problem with this, is that the photos are getting out there. They're also getting into places that people don't know. I mean, there's websites that have been shut down where people are collecting, pictures of sexting, and there's places where these photos turn up. One of the big issues with this are the legal issues, and every state has a different law about it. New Jersey recently adopted a new sexting law that gives first-time offenders an education program. It kind of has a layer of protection, acknowledging that kids might not be, thinking this through. Instead of giving a child pornography, major charge right away, they're kind of putting a layer of discretion in this law. If you go to cyberbullying.us, which is a great website by the Cyberbullying Research Center, they have a state-by-state breakdown of laws, so you can see what the laws are in your state. Other areas to consider are, we mentioned before, privacy invasion and theft. Going on, getting personal information, spreading that information. A lot of times kids will get someone's phone number and just send it out to everybody, and then that kid will get prank called by a lot of people. Or it could be stealing personal information off the computer. And masking identity is a real big risk too. Oftentimes kids are not aware of who they're talking to online. They might think they're talking to someone, they trust somebody, it could be someone else. There is a new app out there that I was recently made aware of through some teenagers I work with, that apparently you can download that app and you could send someone a text message from whatever phone number you want. So someone could pretend that they're texting someone from someone else's phone number, which can cause major problems. And you can just imagine if someone's bullying someone and they're kind of hiding who they are, how much that might even make the situation worse. So why do these behaviors occur? Well, the first thing out there is that it's so easy to do right now. The internet and the cyber world provides a mask that people can wear. They can hide behind it often. It's easy to do. Just type a message, send it out there. It's not face-to-face. It's easier to cause damage from afar. There's also behavioral factors. Obviously, like I said before, individuals that engage in sexting or bullying or harassment online, there's a lot of reinforcement. They get a lot of social attention for it, rewards, and they might have other friends that do it, so they kind of follow along, follow the leader. Someone might have other reasons behind it, past history of trauma, depression. It's socially accepted. That's kind of a really big thing right now, is that, especially with sexting, is that it's becoming more and more socially accepted. I heard from a few individuals recently in school that are in high school age that they have almost everyone in the school's picture, sexting picture on their phone. That everyone just kind of trades them and sends them out. So I don't know how accurate that information is, and it was several groups of people that were talking about it, but the research shows that it's increasing, but it might be increasing more than adults realize how acceptable it is to send pictures of yourself to others. And obviously the rules of the setting, the school, the cyber world, and the social climate. And the one part about online world is it's definitely less supervised than face-to-face. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to throw up some of these. So when we're talking about cyber risk, many of you know this already, so I just thought I'd put it on here. But where are these risks taking place? Facebook is a major place. Instagram, on smartphones, all kinds of smartphones, through chat sites. There's sites like Chat Roulette. Omegle's another one like Chat Roulette, where you could just go on and randomly meet people through video and talking. Trolling is when you go onto the message boards and start trashing people and saying nasty things to them, and to cause problems. And also on computers and on streaming devices and video games, this stuff goes on as well. Especially in video games, there's several good YouTube clips showing an adult playing a child on one of those shooter games like Modern Warfare. And just talking trash to the student or the child the whole time. But there's lots of examples out there. This goes on in all these areas and even more. Some data just to kind of look at. There's a lot of data out there, but in these numbers, I think all of them are probably low estimates, or a lot of them are. So the estimate is that 8 to 18-year-olds spend about 9 or more hours a day accessing digital entertainment, which is a lot of time. Teens send about 1,800 texts a month. On average. That's a lot of text messages, and it's probably low. A study that came out of Israel recently showed that 94% of high school students said they admitted to using their cell phones during class for Facebook, YouTube, and pictures, non-academic related areas. Now there's a wide number of students in this range. 6 to 50% report being cyberbullied, and this includes kids ages 8 to 18 as well. And there's lots of different studies, so it's kind of a summary. But it really shows that there's a wide range of students out there and kids that are being exposed to this. And the last two I think are pretty striking, that 4 to 20% of students report sending sexually suggestive content, and 13 to 31% report receiving sexually suggestive content. And those numbers are from a few years ago. And I can only imagine that these are low estimates. So just think about, around 20% of students in a high school have received some kind of sexually suggestive pictures on their phones. The impacts are known and spoken about, but this type of cyberbullying and harassment and the danger of the internet could affect everyone. The witnesses, the victims, the children, could lead to anxiety, depression, school avoidance, work avoidance. This does happen with adults too. This could also lead to more violence or acts of retaliation, and all the way up to self-injury and suicide. And the effects can be long-term. One of the things I usually point out when I do talks on bullying is I do an activity where I ask everyone to try to remember some events that happened in the last year, or even in the last 2 days. What did you have for dinner 2 days ago? And have everyone raise their hands if they remember who won the NCAA basketball tournament this March. Most people don't really raise their hands; they can't remember. But then when you ask, how many of you remember sometime in your life, especially in childhood, being a witness to or being involved in a bullying incident? And almost everyone raises their hands. So for everyone involved, a bullying incident stays with you for a long time and has long-term impacts on who you are as a person, and the memory stays there. It can be very traumatic. And also, it's just doing a search on Google every day, or looking at your local news. There's always something out there. This is a major topic: the cyberbullying, the cyber risk. It's going on every day, in schools, and mental health practitioners and parents are dealing with this on a daily basis, and it seems like it's going on more and more every day. Trying to find out where kids are doing this on Instagram, on Snapchat. Just some stories that you might have heard about. In March, there was a big scandal in Ridgewood High School. The app Snapchat, which you take pictures and you send to someone, and you put a time limit on how long they last until they disappear. Someone used Snapchat to send naked picture of themselves. But the problem with Snapchat is you could take a picture of your screen on your phone. So even though the picture might dissolve in 30 seconds, someone can keep it by taking a screenshot. And those pictures were sent around. It was in the news because the police got involved. And if you've watched the news today or in the last day or two, you see there's a case in Florida where 12 and 14-year-old girls were charged with a felony in cyberbullying suicide case where they, linked to a girl who ended up jumping off a water tower because she was so traumatized by the cyberbullying that went on. And also, there's other articles about it with, for example, the Maryland schools recently are going to be partnering with Facebook. Facebook's going to make it easier for the school officials to find out what's going on Facebook and take down posts. And that kind of brings up the question of what's the school's role in policing what goes on in the cyber world. Okay, so now we're going to move on to strategies. And really, we're going to use a three-tier model here, but to kind of break it down, we're going to use the acronym ACT now. And the ACT part is really the universal strategies that you should use with everyone, the preventative strategies. The now part are really secondary level prevention and intervention. So it's really when something happens, it's responding to the crisis or the situation in the moment and what to do. And the exclamation point is really for a tertiary response or a targeted response for difficult cases where someone is a victim or a bully or a really tough case and they need more intensive services or a plan. So we're going to use this framework to talk about different strategies. So first, for active management of cyber, the A in ACT now, it's the active management of cyber activities. First, we want to establish a home and school culture of safe cyber use early. This is important. It's starting from day one of establishing a culture in school, home, or being safe. So this involves many areas. First and foremost, it's supervision and moderation of cyber use from an early age. There are many kids that are given a smartphone, at age 2 or 3, and it's in their hands, and they have access to the entire internet, and it requires supervision and moderation from day one. Talking to kids about passwords, how to create safe passwords, how not to give them out, accessing, how to protect your accounts and your private information, not opening messages from people you don't know, basic, cyber safety skills. You get an email, don't open it if you don't know who it's from. Don't give out your personal information online in any form. One way to think about it, which is helpful, is think about it like a car. There are so many risks with online activities or cyber activities that it really should be looked at the same way as giving a kid the keys to drive a car. It's a powerful tool, and problems online can last for a long time. The internet can be very permanent. If something goes on there, it can cause a lot of difficulty for someone. You can stress to kids that it's a privilege, not a right, to have access. They need to earn it by demonstrating safe use of the cyber technology. So it involves discussing risks early, talking to kids about managing an online reputation. Examples of what an online, how to, how do you come across in the public? Do a search for your name on Google, see what comes up. Check your digital footprint. What digital information has been out there following you throughout your life? Did you have your entire life documented on Facebook or online? A lot of times kids have a difficult time understanding this, but it's something that should be discussed from an early age. And at the bottom, the adults in school and at home really need to model positive behaviors and responsible use on the internet. The kids are going to follow your lead. Okay, so setting limits and rules for cyber use is number 2. So along with supervision and moderation, goes right alongside is setting specific limits and rules for cyber use at home and school. There should be clear rules. The kids should know where they can use it, when they can use it. And part of that should be no tolerance for cyberbullying, harassment, or any risky online behavior. Also, part of setting limits, our parents can control some of that aspect by setting limits for the technology. So parental controls on the devices. We'll talk a little about that in a minute. But also setting routines and norms for use. I talked a little bit about this in my last webinar, but having a schedule for when they can use technology, where. At times, having maybe a whole family family will go on a tech diet, maybe getting off the phones for a little while, taking breaks. But this is really just, preventative measures to set up limits for healthy cyber use. Next, number 3 would be to, actually grant a cyber driver's license for the kids if they earned it. So really say, like, look, these are the behaviors you need to demonstrate to be able to use these devices. And the privilege can be revoked if they don't earn it. Parents also in schools want to check and oversee the use. And one way, they could do it, which a lot of kids would not like, but you could get your own account as a suggestion and kind of monitor what goes on. So if you can get on Facebook with your kids. If they start, a new thing like, oh, I'm on Instagram now, you might want to get an Instagram account to see what's on there. And last but not least is you really want to assess for cyberbullying or any other red flags that go on. Check in with your kids, talk to them. See if there's any red flags that pop up. Are they becoming more anxious around going to school, being isolated, avoiding situations? Possibly they're not really getting bullied directly, but they're witnessing someone else and they might be uncomfortable. So you really want to encourage them to talk to you about it. One other strategy under active management would be you could create a cyber inventory for your child. It's an exercise you can do every once in a while. You can do it for the whole family. But really, you create an inventory. What is going on with in the cyber world of your kids? So what hardware do they have access to? Do they have their own phone? Do they use your phone? You have an Android tablet? Do you have gaming systems? There might be ways kids are getting online that you're not even really aware of. And on those devices, what software are they using? So programs, apps, video games. And for each hardware and software, what accounts do they have? So there's hardware accounts or software accounts. There's accounts for, you have your own phone line, you have an account on Facebook, have an account on Twitter. And for each account, for hardware and software, really kind of make an inventory of what privacy settings you have set or are available or parental controls. This little exercise right here could really enlighten you to some areas that, are maybe potential spots for problems online. Also, you want to find out where they're getting access to the internet. So known access points to the internet. So online they get access at your house, maybe in school, through their cell phone data. One thing I want to point out is that often kids who have smartphones, the parents could disconnect the phone line or turn off the data plan, but the kids can turn the phone and put it in airplane mode or just use it with Wi-Fi, and they can get online that way as well. So there's other ways around it. So you got to check for what we call covert or unexpected access points. And what I would say is that they're going to be able to get online somewhere. You can't stop everything. There's so much connectivity out there, and there's so much technology that, even if you don't let your kid have a phone, his friend might have a phone and might be online at school showing him pictures of things. So, it's more preventative and safety measure than stopping everything. It's almost unrealistic to do that unless, you're living in a log cabin away from all technology. Okay, so more on parental controls real quick, because I get asked this a lot, and I'm not a representative for any of these companies, but I do want to point out that if you have a cell phone, you're with Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, the major plans, even other cell phone companies. I don't mean to leave anything out, but most of them or all of them offer plans for blocking calls, texts, websites. They have different ways to control these. Some have actual apps you can have on your smartphone where you can shut devices or connectivity on and off for your kids from a remote location, which can be very helpful. I recommend contacting these companies and talking to someone to really learn about it. Well, they have information on their website, but it would be good to talk to someone as well. And remember, Wi-Fi access might not be blocked when you turn off cellular data plans. Kids could also get on through Wi-Fi. And they might be able to make phone calls through Wi-Fi. There's apps that you can make actual regular phone calls or text messages just through Wi-Fi. So if the cell plan is blocked, it doesn't mean that your kid's not going to be able to connect. For Windows and Mac, there's the basic computer operating systems. You can limit use, passwords, block access, limit time. On Android devices, there's something called Android tablets and phones. They have parental controls. They have something called restricted profiles, where you can make a profile that's specifically restricted. But the problem with that I've read about, they might have fixed it, is that it really is app dependent. If you have an app that doesn't enable those features, it might not be restricted. So if you have an Android tablet and you think it's controlled, you might want to check it out. your kid could download a new app that doesn't have any restrictions on it. For iOS devices like the iPhone or iPad, they just came out with the new version. I recommend getting that for parental control reasons, not for any other reasons, but they tend to have more ability to block websites and content, and you just put in a PIN code. So if you have an iPad you share with your family, you could block all the websites, and then when your kids are asleep, you want to use the iPad, you put in your own PIN code, you can get around that way. There's also third-party apps and software to do parental controls. So something, these I'm not trying to sell any of these. I don't really know. I can't speak for them personally too much, but there's some that come up on searches that seem to have decent ratings. Or Net Nanny, Norton, and McAfee, you might know from Virus. They have programs too to help add more parental controls to devices. There are a lot of options for that. Okay, so now the C part of the act now. This basically focuses on the climate of having a climate that's focused on safety, caring, and respect. And the reason that this is in here and it deserves its own category is that research shows that the climate of the setting plays a major role in the rate of bullying and harassment that goes on. So really, this requires modeling respectful behavior by parents, school personnel, students, everyone involved. And you could do this by, posting rules and going over them and talking to them about and making it a part of the whole school community, related to respect, caring, having good conduct, citizenship behavior, and no bullying. And the school mission statement could be a good part, a good way to really promote that. And also having, and promoting and talking about positive policies or positive procedures for responding to this kind of behavior. So, kind of encouraging the climate. If you see bullying, what do you do about it? You tell someone, you let them know. So you want to set expectations for this and encourage action, encourage positive behavior, promote the messages. And I point out this study. This is done by Maurice Elias, psychologist at Rutgers, professor. He did a whole big study on bullying, where they studied 48,000 students in New Jersey schools a few years ago, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. And what they found in that study was bullying was linked to school climate and was most strongly linked to the respect students felt in the school. So when they surveyed students, the students felt pride in their school, they felt that they respected the school in general, bullying was less likely to exist. And that was one of the strongest variables in this very large study. In particular, I think this is interesting that students felt like they were less, bullying occurred less, and students felt more able to cope with it when they perceived their teachers as being caring and supportive to students and to each other. So when students saw and witnessed and just observed teachers and other faculty members being supportive and caring to each other, that was very positively correlated with less bullying. So, just having the climate in the school is a big thing. So kids pick up on these other behaviors, and this whole climate of positive behavior really does shape the situation. Okay, so the T part of ACT now is related to teaching and communication. So teaching and communicating between parents, students, and schools. This is a huge, huge component and a big area that needs to be there, is that schools and parents need to be on the same page. Schools cannot be expected on their own to police what students do outside of school. Schools are not with kids after school, and they're not there all day when the kids are online. Schools basically, get all the information and find out what goes on. Although this behavior does occur in school as well when students are texting in school in those areas. But parents in schools need to be talking and communicating about how to do this. Some suggestions are, at PTA meetings, this could be kind of an area that's discussed on a regular basis. You could create a parent and school cyber committee. Getting law enforcement involved and legal experts could be very helpful as well. Schools, one recommendation is that schools provide, I'm sure they do already, but just kind of, touching on these points. But providing not only an outline of the school policies regarding, tech use and cyberbullying, but also to provide updates to the parents, because schools often hear a lot about what's going on, especially counselors, even teachers. So really let the parents know, like, these are the new apps and devices that the kids are using lately, and here's some known issues. Here's what we're hearing. The kids are arguing a lot on Facebook. So just kind of give the parents a general heads up, and maybe providing some suggestions for managing tech use at home. And I think that will go a long way with communication is for parents and schools to talk and work on this together. One suggestion that is made in a bunch of places is to have a peer mentoring program. So really this goes with a positive climate as well, but students can help other students. You could have older students work with younger students, promoting a positive message about handling the situations or not putting up with it, and having safe cyber usage. Okay, so more specifically, teaching kids, it's important to teach them actual social skills, or the skills required for positive social behavior and safe cyber behavior. So it's important for schools to have some kind of social emotional learning and character ed program going on that's ongoing, that really reinforces through multi-years and multi-components and multiple curriculums that kids are learning skills related to social problem solving, self-regulation, conflict resolution, emphasizing empathy and listening to others. Kids could also, you can kind of go over them specific electronic conversation skills, talk to you later. I go over that in my iSocial Skills webinar, but it's just some steps to guide you through, or just for kids to remember when they're actually online, to kind of careful about how they present themselves online. And also make sure you empower students with inclusive, positive activities. So anti-bullying clubs, promoting the message throughout the school, having posters. All this goes a long way to communicating the message and reinforcing the skills. Okay, so simple actions that kids could take, kind of give kids a basic list or some areas to touch upon. If they are cyberbullied, this is stuff you want to teach them in advance so they know this, is to tell parents, tell school staff. Keep the evidence, but don't share it, because when stuff's online, you could save it. To block and ignore the bully online. It doesn't mean you ignore and forget about the situation. It just means don't retaliate or get sucked into it and start retaliating yourself and doing these behaviors, because it makes it more complicated for the adults trying to figure out what's going on when both sides are really attacking each other. Also, can notify the website monitors, the cell phone companies, internet service providers of what's going on and report someone. And you could, if you need to, you could contact law enforcement. Okay, so now we're on to kind of the next level, where if bullying or harassment is occurring online, these are steps to take. So the end for now is no cyberbullying or no harassment. Just think of the word no. And the idea is you want to stop behaviors immediately. So as soon as it comes to your attention, you should really work towards stopping it. Ignoring it is not the way to go, and it's basically condoning the behavior. So you want adults in schools, really, and you guys know this because you do it all the time, but you want to make sure you respond quickly and you're proactive. You want to stay calm. You don't want to make the situation more intense. You want to make sure when you're responding you're calm. Reassure the target, if especially let them know they're okay. And you want to make sure that the situation is safe. If there's some major threats made, you want to make sure that something's not going to occur, that the target's safe, and also the other bystanders are okay. So this stage, really, the very first step of making sure that once you hear it, you respond. It's worth putting as its own category that stop behaviors immediately. That avoid some common mistakes. Number one is overreacting. Try not to overreact to the situation and start accusing kids of what's going on, pointing fingers at different people, different parents, different kids. It doesn't help the situation. You also don't want to ignore the bullying, like I said, and you don't want to do things like force the kids to get in front of each other and publicly say what they saw. You want to keep everything right away kind of separated and try to figure out what's going on. The next step is the O in now, and that is to have an objective and organized response. You want to find out what happened and be objective without blaming. Okay, your goal here is to stabilize the situation while you find out what happened. You're just collecting information. You're making sure everyone's safe and okay. We're going to take a look at the evidence that's there, and so hopefully the kids will have the evidence to show you that, so you can back up what they're saying. And you want to let the proper personnel take over. So in a school setting, you want to make sure the anti-bullying coordinator, the bullying specialist is working on it. The counselors are involved. Parents are involved. The right people are involved. The next step is really to determine in a part of an objective response, determine if it's bullying. It might just be a mutual fight online with two people of seemingly equal power arguing and going back and forth. And a lot of times it doesn't matter who started it. It's just got to stop. But to determine if it's bullying, you want to make sure that it's intentional, there's a power imbalance, and it has some repeated elements to it. And you also want to check in on those involved, how worried the kids are about it happening again. Okay. So in this part here, we're winding down. The W in now is the last step is after you've stopped it immediately, you've had an objective response where you're really trying to find out what happened and determine if it was bullying. The last step is you want to work with those involved. You want to teach them, and you want to help them and guide them along. So I'm just going to use the bullying model here for this. But so the first part is the target or victim. You really want to assure them that the bullying was not their fault and reassure them, because a lot of times the victims will internalize it and blame it on themselves. But really you want to provide them a lot of assurance. You want to give them advice and work with them with skills about what to do if they're threatened again. Telling an adult don't retaliate. You want to identify and work on any lagging social, emotional, or cognitive skills as well. I mean, it's particularly school mental health practitioners, or but in general, you really identify what's going on here. Does a student really have a hard time with empathy or taking others' point of view, or just being aware of what others are saying online? A lot of times it's very hard to pick up on social cues online because you don't have the nonverbal cues, and they might not really get it. So you might identify what areas you need to work on to help them better deal with the situation if it occurs in the future. You want to develop a safety plan and relaxation calming strategies, if that's required or needed in those situations. And in a school setting, if someone's really been avoiding and they haven't been involved, you want to work on including them and rejoining them in class activities that are positive, with students that are positive, and helping develop those positive peer relationships. For the bully, really you want to clarify that the bully knows what they did. A lot of times, they might deny, they might not realize, what they did, but you really want to make sure that they know what the specific problem is in the situation. In a more detailed way, you can work with the bully to understand why they bullied. But really key is that the bully really needs to face consequences at school and home. And it should be used as a teachable moment, and it should encourage the bully to help build some empathy if that's could be established in that situation. But if it's left alone, there's no consequences. The bully will just be further reinforced that you can get away with this. Also, it's important to point out that if this is a cyberbullying situation or any bullying situation, that conflict resolution and mediation do not work, because it's not a conflict between two people of equal power. It's a conflict between someone who has more power over someone else. So it's important not, if you just determine it's a real bullying situation, to not do a conflict resolution. But if it's not bullying, if it's more mutual or harassment or a situation that's a little different, conflict resolution is usually recommended. For the bystanders, remember, it could be just as traumatic for them. You want to listen to them, see if they're okay, and you really want to focus on teaching them steps to take if they witness it again. Tell the bully to stop. If they could stand in, they could really. The bystanders in the situation, the peers, the people on the outside have some of the greatest leverage in a bullying situation. They could really help mitigate the situation, distract the bully. They can really just directly tell the bully to stop, and they're the ones that could quickly notify an adult. And one thing is to remind them, and you can use this saying, I'll show you the next slide, is that it's not tattling, it's doing the right thing. And you could use this this phrase to drive home a point, that tattling is getting someone in trouble, but telling is getting someone out of trouble. And in this situation, that the bystanders are really telling, they're trying to get someone out of trouble. Okay, so on the home stretch, The exclamation point in Act Now is really a targeted response for difficult cases. So when you have someone that's really been involved with either harassing someone a lot or being harassed, you really want an individualized plan at school and home. It's like a lot of other behavior plans, you want to have target behaviors that you're working on, establish goals for the plan, expectations. In general, the goals for a plan should be to increase positive behaviors and decrease bullying behaviors or harassing behaviors. It might include empathy training, reinforcement for demonstration of positive behaviors, and removal of reinforcement for negative behaviors. It can include more structured activities. Can include, I don't have this on the slide, but setting more limits in general. Having a real strict schedule with cyber use and have increasing supervision of those activities. For people that tend to be victimized a lot, you can include social skills training that includes assertiveness training. Having someone practice being more assertive and take initiative when they're being pushed around. And really, in these situations, you might need more professional assistance, either in the school, getting linked up to counselors, or legal involvement, and either with law enforcement or lawyers. Okay, so I hope I was within the time limit. And I do want to point out some references and resources before we go. And I do want to say that there is a ton of information about cyberbullying, bullying, sexting, and all these areas online. And I don't include everything on here. I just include some sites I think are pretty good. And let me just point out a few on here. njbullying.org is a website, based on New Jersey bullying, but it has a lot of good references. Cyberbullying.us has, I think, one of the largest websites for cyberbullying. It's run by 2 researchers. And basically, they have all kinds of information, downloadable PDF file pamphlets for how schools, parents, kids should respond or prevent cyberbullying. They have information about cyberbullying laws. But cyberbullying.us is a really good website for that. This FBI website also includes a parent guide for cyber and internet safety. On this page, for schools or those interested in more school-wide character ed or social emotional learning programs, this Castle is really the site to go to. It has a lot of resources there. They have a bullying prevention guide, which I have the link to. You can download directly here. In that guide, they recommend some SEL programs that have been evidence-based that are pretty good for bullying, meant for schools, called Steps to Respect, but that one's by the Committee for Children, Lion's Quest, and Eyes on Bullying. Here's some links to cyberbullying laws. This is the link on the cyberbullying.us if you're interested in what the laws are in your state. Here's the link to the New Jersey law. There's other websites on here that have some information. Common Sense Media has information about using technology with your kids and media. Techlicious is also a really good site that has information. But there are countless sites out there. Here are a bunch of resources, books. Some of them I had in my last webinar as well, but there's a book called Cyber Safe by O'Keefe, which basically is dedicated to this topic as well. And I also recommend, I think Larry Rosen's book's really good on eye disorders, talking about using technology in general. And with that said, I thank you very much for tuning in.
Dr. Hartke, thank you very much. A lot of great information. I'm going to go right into some questions that have been posted. Would you talk a little bit about the role that the parents of the bullier play? In that recent bit of news that just was on the news within the past day or so about that girl, the sense of what I picked up from the news was that there didn't seem to be a lot of empathy on the side of the bullying side. So would you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think it really shows the importance of the parent role in the situation, how the parents model the behavior that the kids follow. So this is general. Obviously, there's different situations, and it's not the parents' fault in any way. But it really just highlights the importance of the parents modeling appropriate behavior, showing no tolerance for bullying themselves, and really supporting a general climate at home and school of no tolerance for bullying. I think that's kind of if that doesn't exist, it's going to lead to more bullying. You know, if the opposite's occurring, where parents are encouraging retaliation or you know, kind of turning a blind eye to it, and you know, sometimes ignoring it's just as bad as encouraging it. So it could really influence.
But you know, there's this whole model out there now of parents standing on the sidelines shouting obscenities and yelling at coaches and all that kind of stuff during you know, sports events that their kids are involved in. It's like this whole idea of I don't know, of appropriate behavior seems to be just gone down the tubes a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's been documented for a while. There's especially in sports. But it's, you know, there are a lot of parents out there that are doing, you know, a great job and really advocates for you know, being safe online and promoting an anti-bullying climate. So for every situation you see is something like that, there are probably, you know, twice as many people or many more people that are, you know, being positive. So I don't think it's saying that, you know, everything's falling apart. I just think that technology is opening us up to more of these problems and situations.
Yeah. Have a good question about digital addiction, meaning in this case that kids are spending so much time in front of screens that they begin to isolate themselves and refuse to go to school, or, you know, terminating personal contact, preferring their digital contacts. So could you talk about that whole idea of digital addiction?
Yeah, I'll bring it up. This was a little more what my last webinar was focused on with iSocial skills. We covered this area a little bit. It's not directly linked to cyberbullying itself, but it's definitely an area of let's say cyber risk or just internet safety use. I mean, kids are spending so much time online, and they do develop, you know, dependence. They feel like they can't survive unless they're checking their phone or they're going on the computer. This definitely leads to problems with kids, you know, avoiding other aspects of their life, going to school, doing homework, refusing to get up, losing sleep because they're up all night playing. It's something that needs to be addressed, you know, right away. And I think setting limits at home and rules for use is an important aspect. In some situations, it becomes problematic and it's very difficult to deal with for many families. So it definitely is a real. I mean, it could be its own webinar itself, Marty. So you know, it's hard to give a short answer, but it's definitely a big problem out there. There are many kids that, especially with video games, just they can't get off the video games, and a lot of battles at home come with the parents saying, you know, time to get off the video game, go to school or go to bed, and you know, the refusal starts right there.
All right. Well, that's a good idea. We'll talk about that other possible webinar.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Kids at an early age, you talk about kids having cell phones at an early age. You know, not a lot of kids necessarily have cell phones at an early age, but they often have tablets. And there's all kinds of great apps that kids can download. Would you talk about the whole tablet thing a little bit? Because it's not cell phone per se, but it's certainly a window into the internet that they soon learn very quickly how to download stuff, and without the proper limits and stuff set, they can get themselves really in trouble, and they're really young.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about tablets is that the line between tablets and traditional computers is extremely blurred, and you know, a tablet can act as a phone. There are apps that, like I said, that can make phone calls, that could send text messages without having a cell plan. Most tablets also include, especially, you know, for example, the Kindle or the iPad or you know, the Samsung Galaxy. You know, those kind of are, you know, they have everything a computer would have, and a lot of times kids use them for video games. They have all the information on it, but often they're not really password protected. They're not really protected, and kids have, you know, they just kind of learn at an early age that, you know, I could just, there's no rules. I just use the internet. I go wherever I want. Even if you know, they're told to monitor it or there's some parental limits. The tablet is just more easily accessible, and it's just bringing the internet and technology to more people's hands. And I think the smartphone, which is really just a smaller tablet, is really what's behind a lot of this, the increase in the cyberbullying, because kids have these smartphones and tablets on them all the time. Even if a parent gave a kid an iPod Touch, which is basically an iPhone without the phone capability, when they're connected through Wi-Fi, they can do everything that you can do with an iPhone. So the kids that, they might just be listening to music, but then when they're in their rooms at home, they're texting people, they're sending pictures. So the tablet really just increases the access to technology.
Yeah.
And
but it looks so cute, It looks so cute at first, that Angry Bird thing or those kinds of things are just like the window into that, and it becomes this great opportunity, and before you know it, they're out there doing, adult stuff, or looking, or not searching for necessarily, but finding is maybe a better way to say it. Yeah.
One big part of we'll have to say one thing about tablets is it's important for parents to limit the child's ability, especially a younger child, to download new apps, because a lot of new apps come out and you can download them and you're exposed to a whole new world of risks. For example, like Snapchat, or when Instagram came out, a lot of people were on it. They thought it was great. I could have a picture of myself. It looks like it's from the 80s or 70s as a tint to it. Great, but really it's another social media site that you can go on. You could post. You could send pictures of yourself out. So there's a lot of risk there, and a lot of times it's just one click away on a tablet. It's very easy to get these apps.
I don't know if you can answer this question right now. Maybe it's one for the chat board, but we did have a question about the program that you mentioned. So it's an app, I'm guessing, that you mentioned that you can send text messages from other numbers. Do you know the name of that, or could you post that on chat board, on our chat board afterwards, and provide a little information about that?
Yeah, I did not. I was not able to get the actual name, but I saw it in action. So I will, if I get that information, I'll post. I'll put a note. I'll do some research and find out the exact name of it.
That would be great. I'll make sure that question gets posted to the chat board as kind of a reminder, and then if you could come up with whatever that is, that would be great.
Okay.
Adults getting bullied. Are there any statistics about that at all?
Yeah, I don't have them on top of my head, but there's definitely research. The bullying occurs throughout the lifespan. So I saw something the other day. I can't remember the exact number, but there's definitely statistics out there that a good amount of adults are bullied. It occurs everywhere. It occurs in the workplace. It occurs in the cyber world. It occurs in video games. Talk to some adults that play Madden football online, especially. There's a lot of adults that play that and there's a lot of talk on that, and it goes back and forth. But it definitely occurs. It's a lifespan thing. We really focus on it with kids, but it has a strong effect on people of all ages.
There's an arrogance almost to this idea of someone having this high self-esteem that it denotes a certain amount of arrogance to me. Do you find that to be the case, or is that just a misinterpretation of that?
Well, it could come across as arrogance, but it depends how you look at it. It depends on the individual, how you want to classify it. But it definitely could come across as the case. It's someone in power who's picking on someone in less power, who has less power than them. So it has definitely a sense of that to it.
All right, I think we have time for one more question, and it's a great segue into this whole thing about power. You talked about this imbalance of power, and so power, power is an interesting. It as defined in this particular case is a little bit different, because it's not, it's potential power, or it's suspected power. Could you talk a little bit about that imbalance?
Yeah, I mean, the power could be really any situation. It could be someone who just is socially perceived as not being as popular as someone else. It could be power by numbers. It could be ganged up on in a group. A lot of times when girls bully, they bully in groups. So it could be, a group of, let's say, 15 girls. Like I think it was 15 girls involved in this case in Florida, for example. So it's a power in numbers, the power in popularity, having more, higher status. It could be a power in size, like physical size. So someone might be, kind of bullying someone at school in person and then also, bothering them at home. In some, online, it could be a power that, parents might not really perceive. So, sometimes someone online has a lot of power. So if you run a message board that's really popular talking about a topic, you might be the leader of that message board. You might have a lot of power. You might, give someone a hard time. If you're in a video game, you might have a certain status in that video game. So it's almost, a virtual power that you have in certain situations.
Yeah, it's perceived, it's not necessarily real, yeah.
Right. It could be real too. I mean, you could have someone who's actually in charge of someone else bullying somebody, especially in adult situations where there is a real power, clear power differential, but it really could be any kind of power differential. And it is perceived, and it does become a tricky situation when, someone's saying, saying it's bullying, but then someone else thinks it's not bullying because it's really a mutual disagreement between two people of equal power. It can become a problem in a difficult situation sometimes to figure out what's bullying and what's not. But at the core of it, it just needs to stop, and you need to support those involved so they don't do it again.
All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and I am going to turn this back over to Kelly for her final remarks.
Thank you all for joining us on our webinar on Cyber Safety Guide for Parents and Educators. There is an exit survey which we need everyone attending to fill out. The discussion board is open now and available for the next 7 days on the NJCTS website for any questions that were not covered in tonight's presentation. That website is www.njcts.org. Also, an archived recording of tonight's webinar will be posted to the site. Our next presentation, TS Clinic at Rutgers, is going to be presented by Dr. Sean Eubank and is scheduled for October 30th, 2013. This ends tonight's webinar. Thank you, Dr. Hartke, for your presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending.